Hello and welcome to another edition of Close Mode, the Enterprise Sales Show. I'm Brian Dietmeyer, CEO of Close Strong. And today I'm super fortunate to be here with Gabe Lulo, CEO of Alliope. And for those of you who don't know what they do, Alliope provides demand gen at scale for startups like mine and established brands maybe like yours. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ryan. By the way, huge fan, super big fan of yours, and really excited to be here. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. So we were chatting last week, and you sort of rocked my world a little bit on an idea. You mentioned that social proof is more important than, say, even sales methodologies these days. In fact, you made a point that it's more about marketing than sales these days. So I really want to unpack some of this kind of. I had so many questions in our pre-call that now I want to unpack and get under those. So
Yeah.
the first one, I want to start at a high level. I think we all get what social proof is, but I want to hear Gabe's definition of social proof.
Well, I think it's important right now that founders, executives, even the go-to-market team, the operation people, even to create content, and there's a big movement right now on LinkedIn and other social platforms. I think Adam from RB2B, he was talking about inbound led outbound and, creating social proof. I'm the chief executive officer of a multi-million dollar agency, and I'm spending 30% of my week on content creation, doing podcasts such as this, writing for my LinkedIn profile, working with my team to ask them questions and talk about, thought leadership and what industry trends are happening. And so when we put all of that out there in the hyperspace, in the World Wide Web, we call it, right, that hopefully hits people. And when they come into our conversations, whether it's a partnership meeting, whether it's a demo, whether it's, an existing client, talking about a new strategy that we want to implement, they're seeing that usually ahead of time, and that social proof is happening. So when we go into those conversations, it's not about, hey, let me tell you about our company and how cool we are. It's, hey, I already know all about your company. I just want to know, what can you do for me? And here's the problem that I have, and how can you solve it? And so that's what I mean by social proof, and that's what we're doing.
So why do you think that is? I mean, is it something's changed sort of in the larger market that makes it smarter now, or it's always been smarter? We just weren't doing enough of it. Like what shifted to make this more relevant?
Well, I think, the TikTok generation, the social media generation, I think right now we have access, especially with AI tools, we have access to research, and we have access to things that we've never had before.
Yep.
Doing a cold calling campaign 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have that tools. We didn't have the research. We didn't know much about it other than maybe what Hoover's told us about it, right? Now data is a commodity. There's huge data companies. AI researching tool is almost becoming a commodity. Social is really where we get not only our news, but all of our information these days. So using that as a tool and not getting away from it is really important, even if you're doing an outbound campaign, which is, by the way, what we do. So
Yeah.
it's not a silver bullet, but it definitely is one of the ingredients to the recipe for sure.
So you also made another point about which I agree with. So nobody's going to read that long PDF from marketing, right? The
Yeah.
world has just changed, but buyers are responding to social proof, and I guess this is linked kind of to my last question. Why is that? Is it just because even buyers who have been around for a while are now part of the TikTok video generation? Why are they responding to this?
Well, I think it's more authentic. I think
Okay.
it shows human connection. I think everyone is behind their screens, and here's the deal. 10 years ago, every single buyer was always asking, "Hey, can you send me a white paper? Hey, can you send me a case study? Hey, can you send me, a dashboard of a client that was similar to ours, and you can show us those metrics?" They don't ask those any. I've never been asked, I think in the last 6 years, 5 years at least, for a white paper. Case studies, yes, here and there for sure. But what we're doing, what our sales team is doing, is they're sending a podcast that's relevant. They're sending a blog that's relevant. They're sending a newsletter that's relevant. They're sending a LinkedIn post that kind of hits what some of the things that were talked about in the demo, and using that as the follow-up or as the third party verification or as the tool to leverage the conversation to move it forward. And I think that's just the way we live in today.
Yep. I think you mentioned something like a follow up to a call going, hey, let me ping you with this blog I just did on that subject, right? That
Exactly.
is that such a great follow up. So in a small firm like mine, a startup, and yours may, I don't know if I call you medium, like you and I play that role, but in large enterprises, Google, Microsoft,
Sure.
who plays that role?
Yeah, I think really it's the go-to-market leaders. I think in a bigger company, you're looking at your VPs of sales. I think you're looking at your CROs. I think you're looking at your CMOs. A chief marketing officer had for years have been, in charge of, creating a great brand on the LinkedIn page for that profile of the company. But now you're seeing them actually creating content on their own profile, and it has to be more organic. Like we're not paying much attention at all to our LinkedIn profile, but we're paying a ton of attention on my account executive profile or my head of talent profile. My COO does 2 to 3 video posts on the internet a week. Now she's supposed to be operating and running the company, which she does, but she's still creating content on her own profile. And so it's creating that authentic conversation. Like, oh, this is not just a company sanctioned, video or a company sanctioned marketing piece. This is a thought leader who is an expert in the space, who's talking organically about something that's important, and hopefully it hits someone and it hits the audience that we're looking to go after.
So you prompt a couple more questions. So first of all, I love that notion. It felt right to me, like it's authentic when we're out here doing what we're doing right here.
Yeah,
This is two guys talking about
it's
business, and
real.
I think it's pretty damn authentic. The other thing you mentioned was, kind of your whole team does this, which is
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. That's a little bit more insight for me, and then in the bigger organization, like it's the go to market lead, whoever it is, but the other thing. So I wonder, how do people get chops to do this, right? Because you can't, this is not just, hey, I want you out there, go to market leader posting once a week, or the other people on your team, right? Don't you have to put some brackets around this in some way?
Yeah, it's interesting because in first it was like, okay, this is all that we have. Oh, by the way, I have this idea. We should start doing this. And I remember one of those individuals like completely scared about doing like, oh, no
Right.
way. This is
Yeah.
not my job description. Right. By the way, she's an expert now and she produces content to the best of them. It's amazing the metamorphosis that I've seen from, not every, like nothing on social media, even her personal accounts, to now she's like a guru. Right. It's pretty cool to see. But now, truly, what we're doing is when we're adding new members, it's a part of our recruitment process. Hey, listen, one of the things that we would be asking of you, even though you're you're going to be the head of talent in our part of our recruitment team, is we'd like to have you get on an internal podcast and write content about what it feels like working here. What do we look for in the right person? What's our culture all about? And have those types of discussions and put yourself out there. Would that be a problem? And we ask that literally in the interview process now if we feel like that is an important person to be on social. And it's part of our vetting now for finding people.
Really, really interesting to me. So, video is a vehicle that we use. Obviously, you talked about kind of
Mm-hmm.
blog posts or LinkedIn posts. Are there other tools? What else? How else do we distribute this knowledge?
Yeah, well, we hired a videographer in house. Like that was our
Right,
first.
right.
We could have outsourced it, or we could do it in house. So we actually found a really talented videographer, and literally she works for us full time. And so she's creating video content every single week. That goes to our writers and our thought leaders, and then we create content together. But it's in house at this point with our video team, and we think video is, like I said, we're in this TikTok generation, we're in this
Yep.
Instagram generation and YouTube generation, and it really does hit home. And nothing beats face to face, but video is the close second.
Yeah. So I wonder, and I was thinking about this, like for my own business, like what role it plays in terms of sort of top of the funnel lead gen, or does social proof help you sell an active opportunity? Would you say it's biased one way or the other?
I will say right now, 60% of our new business is coming from content. Now,
Okay.
whether that is an outbound call that we did and it said, hey, yeah, I saw you on LinkedIn and I'd love to hear more about what you do, or whether it is an inbound call that came into us because they saw something that resonated and they reached out to us. So those are the two ways we're tracking it. There's a third way. We have a big partnerships program. So we have a network of go-to-market leaders that are referral partners of ours. And by the way, we attract all of them through our social content. So that, of course, is another way of looking at it. So we look at our business, new business every month in three real sources: pure content creation, partnership, and then our own outbound efforts. And we're sitting at about, a third for each right now, but we are seeing content and partnerships really have a big uptick at this point.
Hmm. So, if we do you think there's a place in if we take a traditional sales cycle from like qualify,
Mm-hmm.
discover all the way through to negotiate and close,
Yeah.
is it playing a role, in more in the earlier stages, or would you say that you're using this content all the way through the sales cycle?
All the way through. I
Okay.
mean, how many of us get emails, right, with the bump? Or, hey, did you see my last email? Or, hey, just checking in. Or, hey, just following up. Or, hey, just want to bump this real quick. Like, I hate those emails. And I make fun of them on LinkedIn, by the way. Usually I blog a lot about that.
Nice.
But I make fun of them because there's no value there. It's, if they didn't respond to the first or second one, bumping it up is probably not going to do anything but annoy them. Now, I always will say the fortune is in the follow up. I'm not saying don't follow up. It's actually the best and most important thing to put the deal forward. However, follow up with relevancy, follow up with value. So, what can you do to make that happen? Hey, Brian, I just saw this really cool podcast. It reminded us of our conversation we had 2 weeks ago. This one really hits home for us
Yeah.
too, because we do the same things and that was talked about on this podcast. Let me know what you think, and send that in a link and send that in a note. That's a strong, authentic, powerful, organic follow up and provides value and hopefully continues the conversation moving forward. And that's how we do it.
So I wonder how this plays in. So I think about, I've heard this so much that organizations are sort of swimming in content and tools and resources, and now there's content management systems that like put all that stuff in one place. This is my chance to pick on something now. I often joke that it's like I can put everything in one place that reps are not going to use, but at least you can find it easier. There was a stat that came from American Marketing Association that 90% of the content produced by marketing goes unused by sales. So,
Mm-hmm.
help me discern that? Like, we've got so much content, people aren't using what we have. Why this?
Well, I think it's because of that old broken, department of sales and marketing, right? And they've been at war forever,
Yeah,
and I think it's the same thing that we see all the time, where sales teams don't talk to marketing, marketing don't talk to sales, and if they do, they're talking about them badly, right? And they're blaming each other, and it's
yeah.
you have to get your sales and marketing in the same room. You have to get them in the same Slack channel. You have to get them in the same group. You have to get them, marching in the same direction. And as soon as you get that going, then it's almost as if they're a part of it, right? Our sales team are content creators online. So our sales team is working with the marketing team to create their content. And on the flip side, the sales team is also using that content to close deals. So they see the value in it now. And so they are prone to work with the marketing team because it's helping them hit their quotas, right? So they're working very well together, and they're almost getting excited about the videos that are going to be coming out on Friday so they can start writing on them, because they know that if they do great content, oh my God, I'm going to be able to use this one to close that deal next week. Like, they're getting excited. It's almost that competitive nature of what a sales floor brings to the table, but you're tying in the marketing team too, and it become very synergistic.
So yeah, that leads into when we first spoke and you were talking about methodology, like, hey, this is more
Yeah,
important than methodology. So that this changes the way we enable sales reps, right? And I,
right.
I think that easy answer to that is yes, but how? Like, what do
Yeah.
we? Yeah,
Well, I think it gets salespeople. Like, there's a problem right now, I think, in the market where account executives are just way too green. We've lived in this world where, SaaS was able to spend a ton of on marketing. They've been living on inbound leads. They haven't had to make any cold calling or prospecting themselves. And it's just been like so gravy. And then over the last few years, that has dried up significantly. funding is not there, budgets are constrained, marketplaces are small, more follow-up needs to be happening, longer sales cycles are happening, more touch points to get to the conversation. And so these AEs have to work harder. They have to be better. They have to be more skilled. And so I think it's forcing, long story short, it's forcing these account executives who we're asking to create content to learn, to do, personal development, to see trends, to have something to talk about on these blogs. And in turn, they're becoming more educated, they're becoming smarter, they're becoming more impactful, and they're becoming better at their sales job. And I think it's a longer play for sure, but we've been doing this for a while now, and we're seeing our salespeople being so much more valuable because
Yeah.
they've been spending time on creating content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I didn't realize when we first started talking about this. I mean, you talk about your other peers, the other execs in your company. Now you're talking about reps
Yeah.
creating content like this. This is a whole ecosystem you're talking about, and there was a buyer study out there that Jim Dickey authored, and this is really scary. Buyers said that sellers are ninth out of 10 places they go for insight, which is really damning. But the good news in this study also said, if you got something to bring to me, I will still see you, but I'm just
Right.
not seeing you now because you have nothing to bring to me. So that kind of feeds right into that, doesn't
Yeah, it does. I mean, I
it?
think the biggest word, if it could be just one, that we've learned and have gotten out of all of this initiative, it just boils down to one simple word, and that's trust, right? A lot of people don't quote unquote trust salespeople. That's been a stigma for decades. But this is by exposing them and by putting them out there, by making them a real human person and seeing their flaws and seeing what's like. I put a post 2 weeks ago about my wife and I going out to dinner, and we went to a cool treehouse restaurant in the middle of the woods. It was like the coolest place ever. And I just posted it. It had more likes and engagement and more impressions than any of my posts. But it
Interesting.
was interesting and it was on LinkedIn. And it was interesting that it humanized me, right? When I got married a year ago, I put a picture of us getting married, and it like went viral. And now that's not all I post. Nine out of 10 posts are about what we do and how we do it and all this amazing business stuff. But those authentic ones just go viral. And here's what's happened. People trust me. People, believe when I tell them the things I tell them because they know I'm a real person and I'm telling
Right.
them the truth. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I'm not, I am who I am. And
Yeah.
it puts you out there, and it makes, again, salespeople trustworthy again, I believe.
Wasn't that Popeye? I am who I am. Didn't he say
I,
that? That's
I am who I am.
yeah. Sorry, when you
Eat
said
your
it.
spinach, I think is what it is.
Yeah, I heard Popeye's voice when you said it. So my last question for you has to do with sort of a how to, and this is
Okay.
selfish. So some of it's my
Sure.
own question, but for those who are listening slash watching, I wonder, do you need sort of a content architecture or category? Like, is someone have to drive the like vision and mission of this thing to go? Like, yeah, here's the 4 or 5 categories we want to sort of produce content, and then the second piece, the follow up to that is there then a filter before something goes live? And I'm sure yours doesn't get filtered, but anyone below you, is there a filter? So if you could hit those 2 points.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring in a third if I could, right?
Sure.
Because the answer is yes to both of those questions in short order, and I'll
Okay.
explain. But the third is you have to also make sure that you're going after the right audience as well and building the right audience to those initial point, right? So
Okay.
right, when I'm targeting people on LinkedIn, I think about every single person I try to connect with, or every single person I'm looking to follow myself, are people that I would want to see my content. And that's how I look at it. So when I'm building my audience, I'm like, okay, do I want this person to see all my content? And not because I'm hiding anything. It's because I want them to be seeing a lot of our content to get value to hopefully potentially sell to them. And so that's what we look at. So building the audience is very important. Now, secondly, yes, we do filter everything. And by the way, they have the right to edit, change, update, and all of our content creators have that autonomy. It's their words, so they're the last person who agrees with it to make sure that it's on their language and their brand. And then it hits my desk and I just do a final review and it's okay, as the the buck stops with me type of person when it comes to the CEO role. I just look at it and say, okay, do we feel this is something that we can deliver on? Right? I don't want to ever under promise and over deliver. And so if this message that we're putting out in the world doesn't speak to the things we can service our clients with, then I don't want it going out. And that's
Yeah.
really my last filter, is just, yeah, we do this. Well, actually, we don't do that. So let's not say that, right? So those are things that I look for, but I want it to be as organic and as authentic from their voice as possible.
Yeah, and I may have I broke my agreement. That wasn't my last question. You made me think of more. I have two more
All
follow-ups
good.
that should be
I'm
quick.
here for
One,
you, man.
good, thank you. So one has to do with sort of volume. You were saying I thought of this when you said this stuff lands on my desk. Give me just a rough number of like pieces per week that are going out there into the world.
We're doing 22 pieces per week right now
Oh,
across the
perfect.
company.
Not even approximate. Yeah,
Nope. Yeah,
precisely.
we're so that's what we're doing. We're
All
doing
right.
22 pieces a week that are sanctioned by our company. But
Wow.
I will say there's another layer of our SDRs are now creating their own content. I don't check those. I let them do that for themselves. Excuse me. But we do encourage them. We give them inspiration. We do give them things to think through and and I do, if I see something online that comes from one of my employees and it doesn't make sense, I let them know. I say, hey, this doesn't really resonate, but A for effort, right? But at the end of the
Right.
day, there's 22 pieces a week as of right now that we are delivering on that are approved by me.
So you're an expert in demand gen. So what percent of these 22 pieces is tied to some thought leadership in demand gen, roughly?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, it's about 80-20. So
Okay. All right.
we're doing 20% that personalization.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I got a recruiter on our team and she goes on a trip and she does a picture when she's traveling. We like doing that because we're a fully remote company. So it's promoting fully remote work. So it technically is about, our brand and what we do. But at the end of the day, it's a very, more personalized post. But 80% of her is her, actually talking fundamentally about recruitment and the SDR role and what's important in technology and tools that we use and what best in class ways of doing demand gen. And so I would say 80% of all of our content pieces is very hyper focused on what we do. And then the other 20% creates that, humanization to it.
So what is that? How do you draw that fine gray line between a commercial and thought
Yeah.
leadership? Right? Because if you put out 22
Yeah.
pieces a week and they all feel like, an ad or a commercial, then that's not going to do what you're talking about. So I know you figured that out. How do you discern?
Yeah. Very minimally would we be ever doing commercial like things.
Yeah.
We would tag the company maybe in 10% of our posts.
Okay.
So like, we can talk about an industry, we can talk about a trend, we can talk about a new tool. And then very rarely would we be saying, oh, and by the way, we do that and we're the best. Like we don't like going that route because again, we're not looking to be an infomercial. We're looking to be a thought leader. But I do want them to know, hey, if this hits home, we can help you. So we pepper that in for sure, but again, it's just a spice. It's not the main dish.
Yeah, I could go on, but I know there's an optimal length for our podcast. But you've been super generous with your time and your ideas. And when we started doing this, it's just like, hey, let's bring all thought leadership to one place, and you just added greatly to that. And for those who are watching and listening at the closedmode.media site, we now have this stuff lumped into categories. So it's kind of, for me, it's kind of
Love
cool.
that.
Like if you're in sales enablement or you're a CRO and you want to hear what four of your peers are saying, you just added greatly to that sort of body of knowledge. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's so great that you do that because it just makes it so easy. Because again, to your point, there is so much content that's out there, and people are looking, and they usually, when they are, they're looking for something specific. So for them to be able to come to you and find something very quickly that's specific to what they're looking for, that's awesome.
Yeah, and when I get a moment, and if there's any academics listening, I'm so happy, and I'm sure now there's finally bachelor's degrees in selling, right? I know DePaul
Yeah.
University and a few other have them, and when I get a moment, think about this, Gabe, for students. right? You're getting your sales degree somewhere. And to me, if I'm teaching at one of those places, I'm going to podcasts like this and saying, listen to Gabe, listen to Brian, and then come back and tell me what they said about forecast management or social social marketing. So anyway, yeah, if
No,
if
it's
you're out
funny. A
there and
quick
you're at a
story,
university.
I was raised by educators. My mom and my aunt are both educators. My mom was a retired school teacher, English. So obviously that's probably where I got some of my wordsmithing in my sales career from. But at the end of the day, I always tell my mom, I'm in education too. I just teach adults
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
kids. You know what I mean?
yep,
So it's the same thing.
yep. Well, I really, this has been a lot of fun, Gabe, and hopefully we'll find a chance to talk about something else because I really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.